It's time for Ladies Can We Talk on 660 AM The Answer. Common sense talk with women and men about politics and standing up for America. With your host, nationally acclaimed speaker and author, Debbie Georgatos. Ladies Can We Talk starts now.
Good evening and welcome, and thank you so very much for tuning in to Ladies Can We Talk. This is always the fastest 2 hours of my week, and I am very sure the show will be just the same. On Ladies Can We Talk, all issues are women's issues, and we talk truth about America. And we're going to have one guest with us tonight who's just fabulous, and he'll be calling in just a few minutes at 6:15. This is actually a friend. I've been on committees with this gentleman named Lawrence Billy Jones, the third. He goes by Billy. He is an African-American, young Republican activist, really dynamic, done all sorts of amazingly interesting things. And I want to talk with him and hear his thoughts about the Black Lives Matter movement and how the GOP should be responding to that, and about a whole bunch of other things. He's done undercover, some of the undercover projects with Project Veritas. He is a Republican consultant. He's just a really well-rounded and interesting young man. I'm so excited he'll be on the program tonight. And the second hour, my leading ladies tonight will be Jenny McGarry and Mari Sullivan. And we have a very packed and great show lined up. So I want to turn right now, as I always do in this first segment, for my Speak Up for America pitch for tonight, my Speak Up for America little talk. What I want to talk about, I want to tie two things together. There was a lot of talk during this past week about an article. It was actually almost like a thesis that came out by a woman who is a New York Times reporter, but she took a sabbatical from New York Times and to do some research through Harvard, the School of Government, and she published a long diatribe, and I did print the whole thing out. I honestly have skim read it, but you get the gist of it. The title of it is, They Don't Give a, I'm just going to say darn on the air, they don't give a darn about governing. Conservative media's influence on the Republican Party. This author's name is Jackie Calmes, C-A-L-M-E-S. I'll put a link to this on our Ladies Can We Talk Facebook page. But her basic premise is the idea that elected Republicans in Washington are stymied from governing. They can't govern well because of the rise of the influence of talk radio, conservative activism, Tea Parties, other sources of conservative political thought. And her basic premise is the GOP should be in Washington to capitulate, to compromise, to give in to the left. Her idea of governing is just give the liberals whatever they want, and then that will be governing. And so when America has encountered, especially in the last 6 or 7 years under President Obama, encountered wider and wider protests from conservatives around the country who are concerned about the direction of the country, and they get information off of the internet and from conservative talk radio, and those listeners then contact their congressmen, contact their senators. This woman's thesis is these pesky American citizens are interfering with government. That's what she's saying. She's saying these darn Americans, who do they think they are to participate in the American political process? And why I want to talk about that is many commentators spoke of it. But I brought it up to you tonight to say this is not just her view. She's a liberal. She's a New York Times writer. This is the view of many in the establishment Republican class in Washington. These pesky conservative activists, these well-informed citizens, they actually understand the content of the Iranian deal, and they're going to tell us whether to vote for it. They actually don't like executive amnesty under President Obama, and they're going to push us to stand up against him. This is a ruling class whole concept that finds irritating the presence of activist citizens who are well-informed. And ladies and gentlemen, if you are well-informed and you listen to talk radio, which you clearly do, and you read the internet and stay informed, you are a blessing to this republic. You are a gift to America if you participate in the American political conversation, if you stay informed, if you speak to your congressmen and your senators and tell them what you want them to do, and you actually are politically active and occasionally may try to take one of those congressmen or senators out through a primary because they don't listen to the people. But this attitude we're hearing, this is not just the American left. This is the establishment class, the elite ruling class in Washington on both sides. And it was an astounding thing. Rush Limbaugh talked a great deal about it. Other people did too. Just this whole concept of the utter irritation the left feels because Americans are conservative and they're speaking up. Which leads me to the second thing I wanted to mention, which was on my website, ladiescanwetalk.org, we have a comment thing. And people, and actually I always give out my email address on air. It's ladiescanwetalk@gmail.com. I cannot tell you the number of lengthy diatribes I have received recently. One just came in this morning off of my website. I printed it out with a tiny little 10 font, single-spaced, 3 pages rant. But you know what? It wasn't an angry, ill-informed, uneducated voter. It was a really well-informed person who knew a lot about what's going on in America. And he was saying, his thing was, it was a Declaration of Grievances. I think it was a play on Declaration of Independence, but Declaration of Grievances. And I can't read the long thing on air, and I won't say the gentleman's name who sent it to me, but it was a really articulate capturing of what so many people are saying. The elected Republicans, certainly the Democrats, but elected Republicans, they don't listen to the voters. And it ties back what this woman was saying is that Republicans in Washington find it so frustrating they can't just go and cut deals. They actually have to listen to the principles being expressed by their own voters. So the third thing I want to tie this into, in this Speak Up for America segment, this all gets to the idea of political conversation and the importance of the First Amendment, which includes freedom of speech. It includes freedom to continue to speak, to challenge, to speak out, and to have a conversation even when the ruling elite is really kind of telling you, shut up, which is really kind of the message of this lady. If you had to summarize her entire Harvard essay of whatever it was, 150 pages, she's basically saying, conservatives, shut up. That's all she's really saying. But I want to get to the really important issue this ties to right now and just of profound importance in America. And that is this debate about birthright citizenship. GOP presidential candidate Donald Trump has, in his piece, he's now issued an actual platform, a plank at least, on immigration, and he calls for the ending of birthright citizenship. And the reason this is such an important thing to think about right now, I don't know whether Congress will or will not even take it up. They may not. But the issue being discussed is whether or not the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution, the 14th Amendment that was brought into law at the time just after slavery was ended. After we ended slavery, it was introduced as an amendment to the Constitution to make very clear that everyone born here, it was directed at slaves, is entitled to citizenship. And to be very precise, what it says is, the relevant portion of the 14th Amendment, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. And the relevant language in there is, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And the debate right now is whether the 14th Amendment, as worded, simply mandates that any person who sneaks over the southern border from Mexico or any other country, just when they're 8 months and 3 weeks pregnant, gets into inside the American border and gives birth. Currently, our understanding is the child was born in America, even though the parents are not American citizens, and that child is instantly entitled to United States citizenship. It's the left opposes some of the terms that are used to refer to that. I'll just say the argument is about whether babies born inside the border are instantly entitled to citizenship, or does the 14th Amendment allow the United States government and allow the Congress to say, you're not a citizen, you're not entitled to citizenship when neither parent is a citizen, you just happen to be born here. The legal question is, does the 14th Amendment mandate birthright citizenship, or to use a term the left doesn't like, anchor babies, but does the 14th Amendment mandate citizenship for everyone born here, or does Congress have the legal right to say, we're going to define what and subject to the jurisdiction thereof means, and we're going to say if neither parent is an American citizen, the baby is not a citizen even though born here. And Congress could make that kind of change or announce and pass that policy, not necessarily retroactively. I think that would be a dangerous thing, but Congress could pass it prospectively, just meaning from the date that law was signed by the president, that day forward, people sneaking over the border and having a baby here would not necessarily be entitled to have that baby be a citizen. Why this matters so much in America is the way our string immigration has existed since the 1960s, really, and 70s, with all the changes Senator Kennedy brought into our immigration system. Once the baby's a citizen, then you have the whole emotional argument, well, you can't have the baby a citizen but deport the parents, so the parents get to be citizens and the grandparents and the siblings, and this string immigration, this idea of keeping families together, instead of saying, sure, we'll keep families together, the baby needs to go back to his parents' country or her parents' country, we've been saying, no, we're going to keep families together because we're simply going to grant everyone related to this child citizenship. And tying back to what I said at the start of this Speak Up for America segment, you will read things online that are intelligent argument about whether or not the 14th Amendment mandates birthright citizenship. There are conservatives who say, that they don't like it, but they think that the 14th Amendment does mandate birthright citizenship. I am convinced it is not. And I'll just tell you a few quick examples, which are why not. Actually, I'll just read some language. The congressman from Minnesota who introduced this bill, this is back when, introduced the language of the 14th Amendment. He actually had in it, after he said the language I already read to you about every person born in the limits and subject to jurisdiction, he writes, this will not, of course, include persons born in the U.S. who are foreigners, aliens who belong to the families of ambassadors or foreign ministers. So the author of it had that language describing what it meant. And in addition to that, at the time, they decided that American Indians, Native Americans, were not U.S. citizens, even though they were born in what is the U.S. territory. Years later, Congress changed that, and they said, well, now we are going to include Native Americans as citizens within the United States. The point of that example is Congress had the right to say yes or say no as to whether these people should be considered citizens, whether they had the right to citizenship because they were born here. This debate will go on and on, this idea, and this idea of whether or not we have, anchor baby citizenship, whether we have, you cross the border, you manage to get inside before your baby's born, and that baby's a citizen. This debate will go on and on. It's a very fundamental and important debate. In my view, it is utterly contradictory to the idea of constitutional federal law to say that a person violating our laws to enter the country magically, because of the 14th Amendment, has right to citizenship, and other people who follow the legal system and apply for citizenship and wait their turn, and some are turned down and never become citizens, that they have lesser rights than someone who broke our laws and entered. We also have in the books right now a law passed by Congress in 1952 that said children of foreign ambassadors, prisoners of war, heads of state, foreign people who happen to be here when the baby's born, the child is not a citizen. The crux of the issue is, does Congress have the right to pass that law? And tying back to how I started out talking to you in the Speak Up for America moment, it's one thing to have an intelligent discussion of what the 14th Amendment means. It's a whole other thing to watch what the left is already doing on this issue, which is they are saying it's a settled issue. You can't talk about it. You can't ask, no talking. People be quiet, conservatives be quiet, Tea Party be quiet, just stop talking. We, the left, we, the ruling class, we tell you, and you got to stop talking. And this is what is happening already. If you read the tone of articles online, it is the left pronouncing as though they're pronouncing that the sun rises in the east. It's a settled fact and no one can change it. Mandated birthright citizenship flows from the 14th Amendment, and it doesn't. And we have to keep alive the ability to have, under our First Amendment, serious discussions and not be bullied by the left. It's the same way the left bullies about saying that man-made global climate change is settled science. Everybody knows it. Can't talk about that. You're not allowed to argue. You can't think anything different from what the left tells you to think. But people, this is an extremely important issue as we watch the millions of people entering America every year, and the American left determined to make many who entered illegally voting citizens, because the left's motive in making these people citizens is not kindness, it's not care, it's not compassion. It is a calculated, cold, raw calculation by the American left that these people will likely be Democrat voters. That's the only reason Democrats care at all. And so we have to be able to say This is our country. We, the people, can speak up. We want to demand this issue be resolved. Now, I don't think we should try to resolve it now. I think it'd be dangerous to take this issue before this current United States Supreme Court, because the current United States Supreme Court does not follow the law. They don't follow the Constitution. It would be dangerous to try it now, but I think in the American political conversation, we have to preserve the question of whether anchor babies get birthright citizenship. Does the 14th Amendment mandate birthright citizenship? And the answer is no. And the answer is at some point, we ought to assert our right to control our borders in our country and pass a law that says so. This is Debbie Georgatos, and I zipped a little longer than I should have in this first segment. Thank you for staying tuned in. We're going to zip off to a break, and then we come back from the break. We're going to have online the gentleman I mentioned a moment ago, Lawrence Billy Jones, to talk about the Black Lives Matter movement and how he sees it. Plus, he is an extremely he's entertaining and energetic. He's had such an interesting life for a young man. He'll be on with us next. So stay tuned to Ladies Can We Talk with Debbie Georgatos on 660 AM. The Answer.
You can listen on the go. Find us on iHeartRadio. 660 AM. The Answer.